Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and everyone online, hello as well, and on the recording, hello. My name is Adam Hems. I'm the leader of the Houston Azure User Group, have been since 2016. My pleasure to welcome everyone here once more. My day job is as a cloud architect with Microsoft, and so cloud is all I know. If any questions other than cloud, I don't know, no idea, not a clue. And still having done it since, well, I was at the launch of Azure in 2010, and I've done nothing but cloud since about 2011, really nothing. But still, every time I learn something, pretty much every day, I learned some new stuff today. So, and hopefully that is the intent of this group. It's a place to learn from, hopefully from one another. And also from our speaker tonight, so members of the community. That is the intent. With that, actually, before I go any further and talk more about history, one thing we did that was fun last month was actually just to walk around and see who's in the room, because there's opportunities to learn from one another. Let's start from you, sir, in the back. Quick intros. This is also actually for James, for our speaker, right? Because he's wondering to know where you're all at in your cloud journey, right? Just here to learn, not a clue. Just that's fine too. We get students, we get enterprise architects, we get a bit of everything. So it's all good. But where you are will help James custom tailor the presentation just for you. Custom. Yes. Hello. We know one another. It's been a little while. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Okay. Still learning. Yeah. Welcome. Good to see you. So.
Priest, I'm here to learn, and I've used and written a few templates. Started playing around a little bit. Azure DevOps.
Oh, congratulations. Excellent. First AKS cluster. I remember that. Those were the days. Never forget that. Your first one. That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, good. Welcome.
Oh. My name is Tony Cardella. I am a software engineer for CSS. As I said, just looking if anything.
Dev tone, we love that. Here to learn some infrastructure code. Although you might know this already to some extent. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. Ray
Almonte. I'm retired. I'm in my mid-70s, and I need this because I'm in desperate need of mental stimulation.
And pizza.
Yeah, pizza.
All good.
I'm here.
Software.
That's it.
For 50 years.
Welcome, Ray. Kim?
Hi, I'm Kim Buddy. I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. I'm here to learn with y'all, and perhaps I can pick up new skill set, meet new people, and looking forward to work with you or learn from you.
Kim also works very closely to help make this happen. Her son Sean greeted you all at the door, so family essence. Sorry.
Rodney Copeland, software engineer, and I'm here to pick up what I can about Bicep.
Another dev.
Oh.
We're out there.
We're out there.
Welcome. Liz?
Yes, I'm a senior data analyst at PSS Industrial Group. I like to learn new stuff.
Here to learn. Yeah. Welcome. Sir?
Hi, my name is Juan. I have no background in any of this. She kind of got me interested in hearing it.
Okay.
Really a registered nurse, but just kind of wanted to hear things out. Yeah.
Okay. Come and hang out with the nerds like us. Geek out a little bit. Yeah. A warm welcome. Yeah. Learn some tech. It's all good.
My name is Leslie. I work in healthcare as a nurse as well, and I just have a fundamental understanding as well. Just came here to learn.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're in the right place. Welcome. So.
Keith Baldwin. I'm a cloud solutions architect as well, but I focus on the dev side, the app things like GitHub and all of that good stuff. First time here at this user group, somewhat new to Houston, so glad to meet you.
Welcome to Houston. Where do you work?
Microsoft.
Oh, you're an okay. I knew that. I knew.
And yet I'm the only one with a Microsoft hat.
Yeah. Well. Jason.
My name's Jason Richards. I also work for Microsoft. I'm a technical trainer in the data platform. I'm actually helping, or I'm ramping up in the AC400, so I said,
Learn.
I feel like I'm getting audited by Microsoft.
That's right. How accurate is
it's
this?
a usability documentation check-in, yeah.
Right. That's right. Yes. Zach.
I'm Zach Crabtree.
Climbing the learning curve. Software whisperer.
I do cloud architecture. Here now.
Okay. Okay.
Experience.
All right.
Did I hear that correctly? Emotional support?
That is, yeah. He's a yeah. He's a
It's
code
always somewhat a bit of that.
and as a code whisperer, and he's been using Bicep for a year. So all the hard questions, James, he sends our way. We send.
Well, that's the thing. You can't be a cloud advocate because you'll scare the developers. Like my people, we get scared if there's really much noise. Whispering makes sense.
That's true. Yes.
No,
Yes.
getting a plane.
Welcome, Gareth.
Those come and.
Okay. Welcome. Okay. There's always something to learn about Azure. Let me tell you, every day, every day.
A few times.
Every time I talk.
Seriously, downplay it, please. Try to get this harder.
Right. It's true. So. Okay. 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 All right. A warm welcome. This guy.
Bill Stevenson. I'm a consultant and school teacher. It's an interesting combination, and also go back to Compact. On the team that decided to beat Microsoft or IBM to the marketplace with the 386 chip. A long time
That was
ago.
a long time ago. You're a veteran.
Following with major accounts. So,
A veteran.
and I'm here to learn and listen.
Excellent still, which is good. Welcome.
I'm Bernard Eldorado, and just diving into the whole DevOps industry. So working on AZ-104 certification and
Oh, yeah.
changed things a little bit there. So looking to gain.
Every 6 weeks, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. You commented saying that there's some Bicep stuff in the exam now.
That's
Yes.
correct.
AZ-104, that's right. Yes, there is. Mhm.
AZ-104.
Yes, they've taken out some pieces, like actually, so they've taken out Kubernetes. And they've also, so the latest version, they've taken out questions for Kubernetes, and they're beefing up more of the Bicep questions, according to Microsoft Learn.
Right. Okay. Today I learned. All right. So exam questions then.
Exam question.
Exam prep.
All the examples.
And we had this lady. Hello, welcome. We're just going around saying who we are and what we know about Bicep, if anything. It's okay. Nothing is totally fine. Welcome.
Yeah, so I work with James.
Lead developer.
Another fellow dev.
Yes, so I'm a senior developer at ACSS and Bicep. Yeah, we use it for all of our infrastructure as code stuff. So.
Welcome. All right.
She actually taught me how to program, well, properly program.
Properly for case and everything, maybe Pascal case. Yeah.
Some of that,
The
yeah, some of that.
tabs, spaces. Okay, got it. All right.
It was more like, from a teacher standpoint, well, from a person who works in education, like imagine the entire paper dipped in red. That's my pull request. Like that was my life for a while there, back in the day. Yeah.
All right. I have one more slide, and
You
then
have online people or anything we need to talk to?
Oh
or-
yeah,
Or-
we do have some online people. Do have some online people.
See, everybody, I'm advocating for you.
Yes. Some folks. Babita, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can, Babita. Hello.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Babita. Work as a senior cloud engineer, especially on Azure. And I work for Bizmetrics. They are one of your partner. And why I'm here, I just want to, I have a little bit idea about Terraform and ARM template as well. I want to see how much changes has been done so far from ARM to Bicep. Yeah.
Okay. A warm welcome. Making notes, James. He's making notes. James Chin, welcome. You introduce yourself? If not, Ketwan. Oh, okay.
50-50 on if people are actually even there when they're.
Yeah, that's true. I know Scott isn't. Hey, Scott, welcome.
Hello.
We're doing intros real quick. Go for it.
Oh, here. So I'm Scott Kissel. I'm based in the Redmond area at this point, and just want to learn a little bit more about Bicep. I have a customer using it.
Scott is also with Microsoft, FYI, James. So we're gathering, we're ganging up on you. So
Building the case.
That's right. Thanks for joining, Scott. Good to have you
Thanks
here.
for having us.
And then Daniel.
Hi, I'm a cloud architect for UTMB Galveston. I've worked with Bicep templates to deploy Azure Landing Zone, customize it, but would love to learn more.
Okay, a warm welcome. And Tarek.
Hey, yes, this is Tariq Khan. I work for Unicree. We do deployments using Bicep, so I'm here to learn more.
Okay, glad you're here. Right, that's everyone online. Right, I have one slide I want to ask that I wanted to show real quick. So sponsors tonight, Microsoft are also sponsoring this one. So an ask, all right, I have an ask. Phones out, take a just wave your phones at the barcode, please. Get the links. It will resolve to a page with some links that are relevant. So we've got at least two, one to the Bicep documentation and one to a certain GitHub repo of our speaker for the content for tonight. So please do me all a big solid and scan the barcode. That would help everyone. Everyone got it?
Right. There it is.
Yeah. Handy dandy information as well. Like I say, links to to James's GitHub repo, and that's all I had. You can present now if you want, James, and in fact, take on over. The floor,
Okay.
sir, is yours.
Howdy, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'll do my best to take over real quick, see if I can figure out how this all works.
Wait first, who are you, James?
I'm going to introduce myself in 2 seconds as I get this monitor and everything working the way I want it to. No, you're good. You're good. All right, let's see what happens. Did I just take over like I think I did? Yeah. Good. Okay, wonderful. This screen lags a little bit, so I'm gonna do my best to try to keep up with it and not get confused as it's not going as fast as I can. Okay, well, hello everybody. My name is James. I work at a company called HCSS. I'm just here as a guest speaker today. I'm a manager of DevOps. I'm a back-end developer, so I'm not here to sell you on anything, nor would I want to. But if you're interested in what we do or why I'm here to talk about it or what tech stacks I work in, that kind of stuff, because that usually comes up. We work on a company that does greenfield software for construction. So that's roads, highways, bridges, anything that's horizontal, not vertical, not skyscrapers, stuff like that. So we're the largest company for that in the US and North America that I'm aware of. But we work with mostly vendor to vendor, so not selling to people. And we usually work with web apps in Azure. We use SQL a lot, function apps. We don't have a lot of VM infrastructure. So the classical type infrastructure, not so much. We do support it with other customers using our software, so we're no strangers to it. But that's not really what we focus on. So the demos today, as I go through this, we'll be focusing on the mostly like web dev and the things I'm most comfortable with. I probably won't be doing like an AKS cluster in Bicep or anything like that. I wouldn't suggest that being your starting point anyway, because I've tried that once, and some things you'll find are a little bit more ARM or a little bit more automation friendly than other things. And that one I find is I would say that's like the middle of the road to advanced course for that kind of thing. So let's get my notes pulled up. That's my quick little introduction. As far as as far as like what I've done or things like that, I've been in technology for about 15 years. I actually started off in sales, believe it or not, and then I realized I suck at sales and technology was better for me. And that's that whole college flip swap that everyone does halfway through. I was no exception to the rule on that. I've worked every position from like DevOps currently. I've done developer, SQL, security, network administration, IT, worked in support, different things like that. So I've kind of gone around. It's just because I'm really ADHD and I just get bored really fast. So I like to keep learning new things and moving around, hence why I'm here doing these kind of things. And really, really quick, if you go to the link, you'll see here, I don't have a laser pointer, but there's prerequisites that have a bunch of links for everybody. And that's all the installs and docs that are going to be used throughout this demo. I intend to cover what this is, why you should use it, a little bit of how to use it, key terms, tips and tricks, those kind of things. What I'm not going to do is go through little itsy bitsy demos until you're 100% comfortable with how to do this walking out of here, because the documents that they have online are actually better than anything I could do. Any Microsoft people? Just going to go ahead. Their docs are so great. You probably just want to use me for more of the talking through it part while we're here. That's kind of my goal, not the actual docs themselves. So it will be posted up, but I actually intentionally made the GitHub a little bit obtuse. So if you don't attend this, it doesn't make too much sense. But if you did, then it'll make a lot of sense, as I'd prefer it to be people who are actually here and trying to relive it or go through or trying to understand some of the things. And I did want to feel out the room to see if people were, why they're interested in learning Bicep, if there's something they're interested in learning to solve. What it sounds like is we have a blend of people just trying it out, a couple of people who are using it, looking for new tips and tricks. And I also heard about app dev and things like that. So today, what I'm also going to do is go through kind of some scenarios, kind of try to make it a little bit more real world. And then we can talk through the challenges and the problems, and hopefully that helps us see how to integrate it into our ecosystem. And then, so real quick, elevator pitch. What is infrastructure as code? Because to understand Bicep, you have to understand ARM. And to understand ARM, you have to know what infrastructure as code is. So let's start all the way at the beginning, and I'll try to go real quickly. Why do infrastructure as code? Well, if you've ever worked with or seen of heard of a person called an architect, they make blueprints. Blueprints are great because it tells someone how to build something. Exact same thing in computers, exact same concept. But a lot of times the pushback I'll get is, it's faster if I just go to the website and click, I want a new server, click, done. You're right, it is faster. It's also faster if I were to go grab a knife out of my drawer and cut a cookie into a perfect circle and cut out that cookie, and that's really fast. Or I spend a little time welding and folding some metal and I make a little cookie cutter 10, and then I just go bang, 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 and it's way faster. And quality control, they're all the same. So that's kind of the thing that helps me think of it is I need something that's a template that gives me the same thing every time, because I want the same thing every time. I want it to be predictable and not random. And it's not faster up front, but it's faster long term. And you can pivot, and I'll show you here in a few minutes how it pivots faster and why it's faster. So then the next thing that we're going to have to cover is like, what is Azure Bicep, or what is ARM? I guess I got to get to the ARM. So ARM was something that a guy named Mark Rusinovich, I believe, was the guy who did, the CTO of Azure. Still, yeah. Okay. It's like 6'5", ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
anyway,
Benjamin, fan go so badly.
I've never been like, I don't get gobsmacked like when I meet famous people, but when I met him, yeah, I was like, you look like a GQ model. You're 6'5" and you wrote Procmon. I can't. This is too much. All right. Anyway, so he wrote this thing, but the problem is that it was written in JSON, and every developer I know who likes developing in JSON. Okay. All right. So they were like, man, this is not fun. No one's adopting it. It's not working really well. So they're like, let's write it in a language that's a little bit better, that's easier for developers, it's easier to adopt, and hopefully they get to use it, and then they'll actually use their stuff. I heard some people say that they're into Terraform, or they've used Terraform. So I'll just real quickly bite that one off. Terraform is a great language if you're trying to work with multi-cloud. So it works great for infrastructure as code for like AWS, GCP, and Azure. Bicep is just for targeting Azure. It's amazing for targeting Azure. I'm not here to pitch you to say use Bicep over Terraform. I just want someone to use infrastructure as code. Half the time the battle is, will you please just use infrastructure as code, not which one? If you're at that point where you're arguing about which one, I'm actually really jealous of you because you're way farther along than most people. So today we'll just cover the Bicep side of things. And if you like it, use it. If not, then you can look at the other ones too, and we'll just kind of go from there. I do also want to cover a couple of base concepts. So that picture showed up a lot smaller with this screen sizing than it did with mine. Let me see if I can zoom in a little. So before we get into the files, I did want to cover the structure of Azure so that people can kind of conceptualize this along with me. This is a tree view, but if you want to imagine file folders on your computer, the root tenant at the very top is a management group. And if you want to think of that as your C drive or your root drive or something like that, that's how that works. Inside of a management group, you could have another management group, which again is just another folder. It doesn't do anything per se. You can add rules to the folder, you can add permissions, you can add policies, things like that. But really it's just a container, like a folder that holds other folders. So then inside of there, if I change my scope, that's the key word there. I'm going to use that a lot tonight. But when I change scopes, it's kind of like changing directories to the subscription. And then if you're in the subscription, you're either going to create a resource group, which is the third tier down. Then I really wish I had a laser pointer. Let's see if I can just kind of hover. So like right here with these resource groups, those things are like the smallest folders. And only then are you going to have all the little resources living inside of the resource groups, which is the very bottom part. So when I say scope, I'm talking about these different tiers, different levels. Make sense so far? Cool. Okay. All right. So I said I was going to try to give you all some real world scenarios. Let's talk about some of the obstacles, the barriers for using infrastructure as code. So we talked about why use it. We want the cookie cutter. We want something that's predictable. But what are some things we're going to run into? So development team adoption. That's a big one. So we have some developers. Who's using infrastructure as code actively right now? Cool. Anyone who's not actively using it, is there any obstacles that they're running into they want to share or anything like that? Okay, that's fine too. One of the things that we ran into with team adoption was the JSON question I just jokingly said earlier. We back in like 2018 or 2017, we did our first pass trying to get everyone to use ARM templates. Didn't go well. It was me looking at it for like a week with blood, sweat, and tears, trying to learn how it worked because no one knew how it worked yet. And well, at least at my company, that is. So we were going through it, learning it, and I'm like, all right, everyone, I learned it here. Let's go learn this. And they're like, I can't read that. I'm like, you're a developer and you can't read JSON? Do you use REST calls? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's not as common as I thought it was. All right. That's my bad. I didn't know that, because I was still kind of getting my chops wet with like getting to learn the development teams and how to help with them in interface. I frankly didn't know what other developers did or what they knew or what they didn't know. So I was I was a little shocked by that. And then I was like, oh, okay, so there's a thing. But then another thing we come up against, and this is something that infrastructure as code is going to solve, not necessarily the obstacle of infrastructure as code as it is, but tribal knowledge. If anyone's on a team, okay, there's a lot of IT people here. Is anyone ever afraid of unplugging a box where you have like this thing where it's like, if you go unplug this over here, all licensing goes down in the entire building? Anyone ever run into one of those? Or what's that computer over there do with all the dust on it? I don't know, but we don't touch that. Last time we touched that was the outage of 42. It's like those kind of scenarios. Tribal knowledge, there's a lot of times I had this happen in my own life where a lot of people have to get into a room and then they diagram on a board and then someone has to like take their phone picture of the QR code or the take a phone picture of like all the diagrams and doodles and things like that. And well, that's not fun. You had to get 10 people in the room. Each of those people were probably like architect level developers or something like that. So what was that, like a $10,000 diagram you just spent for 1 hour of time? So then the always thing is like, who knows where everything is at? Like, do you know where everything is at? Like, and just and when you're thinking through this, don't think of your project you're working on. Think of the team down the hall and then ask yourself that same question. Because if it's your project, there's going to be a little bit of bias. Like I'll be like, yeah, I know where everything's at, but I could honestly tell you there's a pull request going through right now that Amanda was working on. It's related to Azure policy. I don't know where any of those policies are at right now. I could go digging and find it in about 5 seconds, but I don't know where it's at this very second. Nah. So then across the teams, so how many regions, things like that, because the thing is, once you deploy your stuff, let's say you got to think about development, production. Is it going to deploy all over the world? I'm not going to host a website in Virginia that's going to host something for Russia or Australia or Japan or something like that. So we got to be able to quickly pivot and keep that cookie cutter quality, because quality of service cannot suffer as you scale upwards. So the other thing is like, how quickly can we get a security fix out? I don't recall anyone saying security. Do we have any security people? We do. Okay. TLS 1.2. How long did that take to upgrade everyone to TLS 1.2? Just did you have to do any of that? Or were you part of any of that? Thank God. Okay. SSL rotations. Does that take a little bit? Or let's pretend pre-infrastructure as code, because I think you raised your hand on some of the infrastructure as code stuff, but not okay. Some of the things we come across where, like with our company, we have just in SQL databases, we have over 6,000 of them in Azure. Then with web apps, we're probably in the probably somewhere in the 200 to 600 ballpark range for Azure web apps. Function apps, I don't even want to count them. It just goes on and on because we have somewhere in the ballpark of like 15 to 20 development teams. Each development team has many projects, and it just adds up and up and up. But now I have to update every web app to TLS 1.2. Okay, well, that's 600 of them. You want to go to the portal and go save. You know, you see what the point is? Like, that's awful. Or if we have a centralized location for these blueprints and everyone is referencing the same blueprint, now I update one value and it goes out to 600 all at once across the entire world. That'd be neat. So I was feeling salty when I wrote some of these. I'm remembering. Or have you ever had an outage that was due to someone switching a toggle that shouldn't have, or someone forgetting to? Does anyone have release notes that says every time I release, this release administrator has to go in and switch this thing and hit swap slots and then go change this setting and grab the new key and pop it over here, and now production has been released to the new release has gone out. That's a problem.
It's job security.
Job security, exactly. Yes, exactly. So that's a thing. Or the very last bullet I added, but no one answer this out loud because I'm not trying to incriminate anybody. There's a lot of Microsoft in this room, so they know though. How many people out there still have that key 1, key 2 from the original time you deployed that resource out in Azure, where it's the key that signs everything, the one that's got the little password key? I would be curious what the telemetry would say on how many times that little refresh wheel has been clicked for people. Like,
No, very often.
if we had a percentage, it's probably, I bet it's under to 0%. It's like 2.28%. They usually delete the resource and recreate it. That's how they get the new ones. So that's a thing. Oh, and The last one was so bad, I actually covered it up. I even put a trigger warning, so everyone prep yourselves. So if we all agree that code that's tested in dev should be the same stuff that's tested in prod, and the environment that's in dev should be the same that's in prod, then your production, then have you ever had your code run differently on someone else's computer? Oh, it runs on my computer, but not on that computer. Well, if you can't guarantee that the infrastructure is the same between development and production, then you're running into the same problem of my computer versus their computer. It's a quality control issue, quite frankly. If I'm offering 2 of something, they should be the same. If they're the same thing, we should honestly be working on the same thing. Likewise, if I were to deploy into a customer's computer, theoretically it should work, but sometimes configuration changes can break that. Has anyone ever had an app ever not work on a computer? Done. All right, we can leave. Presentation over. So with that said, we have about, let's see here, 8 o'clock. So we have about an hour and a half to run through this. This is what we'll be going through today. The actual, so I'm going to jump into VS Code. There's not going to be slides after this. This is it. I'm just going straight to VS Code, and the whole thing's going to be in an editor the entire time. But what we're going to do today is we're going to create a resource group. I will admit, I've already created the resource group. I did a little baking show special because I realized I did the same mistake I made last time. I created the resource group doing a trial run to make sure this didn't mess up. Then I created the key vault and went, oh crud, I don't want to delete the key vault and then get it into soft delete and then have to deal with all that. So I just left the resource group. I left the key vault. And I was like, you know what? We'll just use our imaginations for that part. But I'm going to create a resource group. So that's the file folder we talked about. I'm going to then create a website. I'm going to kick this power cord and then get my mic too loud. We're going to add telemetry. We're going to secure the password so it can't be stored in source code for the telemetry. In this case, we'll use a thing called application insights. Then we're going to add a database. We're going to connect it using a secure password. We're going to turn on managed identity, which is the web app's ability to use no passwords to talk to the SQL database. We're going to look at deploying to several environments. Oopsies. I mean, how you just built everything. Now let's go do the production environment. Let's start all over again. Or we're going to then deploy all over the world. Look at what that would take. And then after all that's said and done, we're going to come back and stock auditor is going to come and say, oh, you know what? I need a diagram for all that. All that infrastructure that you normally had to put a bunch of people in the same room and diagram everything on a dry erase board. Actually, I need to diagram that. And so, yeah, get on that. And then the last thing, I'm actually not even going to talk about. If you go to the GitHub, you can sneak ahead and look at it, but you're really just ruining it for yourself. So that's on you. So I think we can get all that done in really only an hour and a half.
Well, the AC is going to turn off at 8:30, so it's going to start getting the Texas hot.
At the very least, we're going to try to do this in 2 hours. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not opening that window. I'm good.
Okay. Windows is broken, right?
I'm not going to make that Linus quote. I'm not doing it. Have you heard that? I personally love Windows. Okay, let's check it. All right, so let me get my VS Code pulled up. And again, if you go to GitHub, you will be able to see this all. Quick check visuals. Can everyone see? Is the code big enough? Is everything good there?
Goes to the back, all right?
Very good.
Yep. Okay, I can read it.
Okay. So I did my best to break this up. I don't know if I just added a bunch of noise to try to help. You can ignore all the green. That's just me trying to help really separate the things for the people in here. It's the best thing I can come up with at 9 o'clock at night and a bunch of, energy drinks later. But basically what we're trying to check in on is the purple actually on the left. And if anyone's colorblind, just let me know and I'll stop using colors to draw people to the words. What happens is on the left, the keyword is going to say metadata. So the metadata section at the top of a bicep file, we know it's a bicep file because the extension is .bicep on it. Who would have thought? Bicep being the arm. And in these files, it has all the bits you need. This is the blueprint of what's about to be deployed. So we're going to go through the anatomy of it, and then we'll actually start deploying things here in a second. So the top one is metadata. Doesn't do anything. It's honestly, you want to write a love letter, this is what you use it for. Typically, it's notes to yourself like, hey, this file does this, next person coming by, this is what it's going to do. You know, it's just little info about it. It'll probably do something later on that's more useful, but at the moment, it's great for writing yourself notes. The second one is the target scope, and that's the keyword that I spoke about that I said when I was looking at the tree view. Keep in mind, this is kind of like a folder. So the top one was the management group. The one inside of that was the subscription, and subscriptions usually are things like my production subscription or my development subscription. I don't know what Azure's official ruling on this is for segregation of those, but typically what I've seen is people do it for cost reasons, like production cost bucket, development cost bucket. There's other strategies, I'm sure. That's the one I see the most.
Reasons for scope, you say?
For scope, like why would I spin up a second subscription? Typically, I see people do it for costing or environments.
Well, security being the other one.
Yeah.
Subscriptions, like policies at those levels. So it's a lot about governance.
I'm glad you called that out because for me, in my head, when I think production versus development, I already just group that in because production environment, the amount of locking down and people you keep out of your production environment is completely different than what you would do in your development. But because that's such a day-to-day for me, I forgot to even call that out. So I actually appreciate that. Thank you. So that's the target scope. So in a file, you can target different subscriptions. The question as like, or you can target different scopes. The reason is, if you ask me why, well, sometimes you need to create a folder. Sometimes you need to create a folder and a couple files. And if a resource group is the smallest folder, then if I target a resource group scope, then I'm probably just going to create resources because resources are inside of a resource group. Resource group, resources, a grouping of resources. And then a subscription can have a collection of resource groups. So it's the bigger one. If I'm targeting a subscription, I can create the smaller things. So if I want to create a resource group with my blueprint, you'll target something higher up. So I target, it's probably better if I just throw up the picture while I say this part, but so we have a little bit something to look at. So here we go. So again, I'm targeting the key, the second one down, the key, because I want to create the one right below it. So if I wanted to create a subscription, you'd probably target a management group. If I want to, and the lowest one that I've seen you can target is a resource group, which creates the resources, but you won't create the resource group. So if you want to create the resource group also, then you go higher. Any questions about that? Or I can just keep repeating myself because I feel like I went in circles a few times there, but I was really trying to make sure we drove that one home. Okay. I made a quick honorable mention right here for this part. There is, they recently added custom type sections. So for people out there who want to use custom typing or anything like that, that's just basically you can create your own type. Like in this case, I said storage account type. And it's kind of like an enumeration almost where those are the only two values you can have. So there's a little line right in the middle for people who aren't familiar with the syntax. That line means the left side and the right side are your options. So you're strongly typed to those things. End of the day, though, you're going to get that value out. So you can try to get fancy with your code if you need to, or if you have a certain obstacle you need to get around. Sometimes that'll save you. I'm not going to cover too much of that. This is really the part that I think the most of the group will get something out of. This is kind of what I consider the real entry point of one of these files. The files are usually made up of, so here, three to four major segments. The major ones are parameters, which are this one, which is at the top usually of the file. And it's things I can't know at runtime or I need to know when it deploys, the thing that makes it unique. So an example would be, is this a development environment? Or is it a production environment? So I would write my template and say it deploys a web app and the environment is f of x or X or whatever you want to call it, whatever your variable is. I don't know what it is, but you're going to tell me the second this goes out the door. So to run this, I would actually need that value in hand. The breakdown of it, if I'm getting too simplified, just let me know. But the breakdown of how this goes is on the left-hand side, you have the keyword parameter. This name can literally be whatever you want. The data type is a string, meaning this could be Mary had a little lamb or something. So let's check out the IntelliSense. I think the IntelliSense is honestly where this really shines. I'm doing this whole thing a disservice by not typing anything in this demo. But if I start to type here, you'll see it has param. Or if I just hold, I think it's control and then spacebar at the same time, it'll give you the completion results. So, okay, I want a parameter. All right. Oh, accidentally hit a down arrow. Getting used to this setup. Well, what kind of parameter do you want? Do you want a parameter with some default values? Do you want only the allowed values? Sure, let's just do that. I hit tab, identifier. Doesn't matter what I say there. I'm going to hit tab. And then you want it to be an array, a bool, an integer, an object, secure string, string, you pick. So then you go and you fill all that out. The little thingy that's right above it, these little toppers right here, kind of like attributes almost. What this does is it explains the input right below it. So in this case, I said, I only want you to have these two allowed values. So it's input validation. It's a chance to say, you can only say dev or prod. If you try to say staging or you try to say pink ponies or some other weird word, get them out of here. This isn't, no, you're not coming to this template. That's not what we want. And then you can get really fancy and you have this description tag where you can try to write little love letters to everybody else, where then if I hover, you'll see it's actually supporting kind of like a lightweight markdown. So I got bullets. Oh, yeah, it's still there. Like you see those little bullets that are on there and they're indented. That's just using markdown syntax, because what I wrote was just the dash. And then I hit the space bar twice with the dash. I never said use a filled in bubble and a hollowed out bubble, little bullet point thing there. That is just good old markdown. So you can get really fancy with that if you want to. Or in this case, I have a max length and a minimum length because I don't want that value being too big. But just to show you, I'm not kidding. I'm going to hover over location. And then I did markdown with code comments and code entries of Bicep inside of the thing. So this is actually Bicep code colorized. I can go as far as to add C# code in there. You want some Go? Why not? Let's just see how far we can get this thing to go. It doesn't support everything. It's not one-to-one. I kind of got a little overzealous playing around with that feature. But I'm not kidding, like Larry. I'll skip ahead a little and just show you. This is exciting stuff. So, boom. Markdown friendly. Code comment, that's C# code, string foo, yo, and then I did some PowerShell at the bottom. So pick your poison. I don't know why you're writing C# and PowerShell code comment, but I mean, if you want to troll the next person, make some fake code that looks legitimate and tell them it's real and they can't get it to work and they got to go try it again. Send them to update their stuff 100 times. You can troll people pretty good. Yeah, go for it. What you got?
Karen first. My question is like,
oh, I see. Okay, well, I'm going to cover some things like that for modules here in a second. But as far as generating documentation, I haven't took it that far yet to see if like a docfx or something like that exists for this. I don't know if there is one. It does? Oh, okay, cool. Sort of. Fair enough. All right.
using a lot of Bicep models, how do you actually teach people about them?
Yeah, so if you want my short answer at the end of this demo, I'm going to talk about hosted ACR documents if we make it there. And then those descriptions and the default parameters will auto-populate once you reference it. So if it says you want to add the default parameters, you hit tab, it'll give you all those. And if you hover over the module, it'll tell you what the parameters are built into it. And then when you hover over each of them, it's using the tooltips section is kind of the way we're doing it, because we're assuming that developers are going to consume it by reference as like a NuGet package almost. But as far as like public facing docs, I haven't gone that far yet. There is a neat website I wanted to show off that Microsoft published. So if you go dipping into their GitHub, GitHub/Azure, and just go looking for anything that says Bicep, they actually have two repos that I was interested in. There's one that's they're starting to create a site that looks like Docker Hub almost, where they have published well-known Azure Bicep documents, and then you can reference them just like a Docker template, or just like if people don't know what that is, it's like using your app store on your phone. You just say, I want that one, and that one, and you pull them in, and you're done. Good to go. And the second repo they did was module authoring best practices, which is still under development. I'll pull them up at the end though, and we'll cover that a little bit more. But as far as like, yeah, I don't have like a DocFX thing. I think every team right now is holistically doing it themselves. So documentation is shared between teams. So this has been enough so far for us. I'm curious to see what you have afterwards as far as like a documentation thing.
What's used by the.
Mhm.
You can use that tool.
Oh yeah, like with the.
Gives you. Generates a readme, generates a partisan, generates
Oh.
data. It helps it forces you to put things the right way.
Oh, okay.
You can use it with the box.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've used it for like I've used like the bicep lint, and I've used the bicep config, which will be covered in here. Some of the like Roslyn rules, kind of, sort of, and those kind of things. But yeah, that's interesting. Okay, we'll cover that a little bit more, I guess, if need. But interesting. Thank you.
And one question, so sure, the IntelliSense, you want to pop up Visual Studio Code, the extension.
Sure. So in my case, that was control, because online is it an online question?
No, I'm asking you to talk about the Studio Bicep extension that you added a long time ago and forgot.
Yeah. So if you come back to the README that's on the website, and you go here, the docs, you have Azure Bicep, you're going to install. That takes you to the docs for how to install and get it all set up. Then for VS Code is the second one. That's the install the editor that I'm using today. The extension, if you just click that link, which is the third one, will take you directly there and you just hit install. And now you have it. As far as deploying it, there's several ways to deploy the templates. So a lot of people use AZ CLI. I don't agree with it at all. I hate it. I'm a PowerSheller by heart, so I guess I'm just a fanboy. So ignore any opinions about that because I'm opinionated. But we'll use Azure PowerShell because I can pick some demoing today. And the Azure PowerShell is just a module that adds on to PowerShell to allow you to do all the, say, Azure things. And that's what I actually like about PowerShell is when I learn PowerShell, I can add the GCP module to work with Cloud or the AWS module. And I learned the tool once. If I learn AZ CLI, it doesn't do anything for me in AWS. So I'm making an argument for Terraform right now, even though I'm about to teach Bicep. So here we are. So so to get the extension, it's right here. Just if you go to my overview markdown that's in the link, and then go to those, you'll be able to see all the stuff you would need, all the tooling you would need for this. Does that answer the questions?
Okay.
Wonderful. So that note I wrote to the online people, just go ahead and delete the wrong line. Yeah, let's do that. All right. Second section, the var section. Another keyword, just like the parameter section. For me, you can use this however you want, but for me, I find that this is great for business logic and doing a little manipulation before it goes out the door. I personally think it's a code smell if you do too much manipulation elsewhere, because I can show you some bugs here in a second and I'll explain why, but right here, what I'm doing is I'm taking the inputs. So if you look at line 51 right here, the resource group name, the folder I'm about to create, I want to make sure that everything is lowercase. So I can't guarantee that, because on my input, if you had read above, dev for the environment or prod for the environment had a capital P or a lowercase d. Well, now you're going to end up with a resource group that says capital D, lowercase ev, dash, whatever the app's name is, and it's all over the place, kind of wonky looking, doesn't look very good. So for vanity reasons, I send everything to a lowercase command. And if you want to know what these little functions are, you can just go to the Bicep documentation I send you to, and it has all the functions listed there. Today, I'm using the one that sends anything to lowercase letters, and then concatenating using the special character $symbol. And all that says is inside the quotes, I'm saying I'm about to provide you with a value that's an object, which an object being the thing I'm referencing up earlier. So like, if you look at line 45, I say location, it's in blue. If I were to put location here, then it would say whatever that value is as part of the string, giving us that output. So this is the business logic side of things. The next part is I'm going to create some tags that are going to go on to the website. Those tags will be used for costing or something like that. They're just, again, metadata that helps me group them together. Like, this is a production resource. Maybe you say prod dash whatever, but that's great and all, but not everyone does that. So maybe at the company, we have a requirement that you add a tag that says environment equals production. Now I can just group everything using that, and people can get all crazy with their names. Everyone's happy, but I still get my cost reports. So that's really all that does. It doesn't actually do anything. So far we talked about inputs and variables, and you're like, all right, that's great, James. So I have a thing I can talk to, and I have a thing that like takes two words and slams them together. Doesn't really build anything. So what am I even here for? Well, that's of course the next part. That's why I would load up for that. Here's where the rubber kind of meets the road. These last two parts is the resource. When you see the keyword resource, that's when something's about to happen. So if your template has that, you're about to build something, and watch out when you deploy it and be careful. As long as you know exactly what you're doing, you're good to go. In this case, I named it my resource group in blue, but you can name it whatever you want. That could have been pink ponies. I just keep using that to make an absurd example so that you can keep that in mind. And the next part is actually the API version. So you can look all this stuff up so if I hover right here over my resource group, you'll see that the type is a Microsoft resource group, and it's the version that they published in 2021, 04, 01. But if you just click view documentation right here after hovering, there it is. There's what it looks like. Want to copy the code? What do those values equal? Good news, it's already there. Well, what if I didn't have that all filled out already? How would I have even known that? How would I even guessed it? Okay, that's fine, fair enough. Well, I want to create a resource. All right, I'm just gonna use tab. I don't care what I'm gonna call it. The quote. And it's gonna be something that Microsoft builds. And I don't know what a resource group is, but it's like a resource or something like that, maybe. And then, oh, there it is. So you just go shopping. Like, you don't have to know what these are. You just kind of got to get in the ballpark of what you're looking for. So I'm going to hit tab. Okay, cool. Oh, perfect. All those numbers were already provided for me. I didn't have to memorize that because I know as soon as I looked at that, I was like, I'm not memorizing any of that. Okay, I don't know which one. All right, this one. I'm going to hit spacebar one time. Oh, thanks. Equals. Oh, thanks, guys. Spacebar. Oh, required properties. I don't know what those are. Tab. Oh, the name. Okay. And the location. And oh darn, don't hard code the locations. Okay, well, I can fix that and refactor that all out for y'all. But the point is that I get that this looks complicated if you've never seen this before. But hopefully, as you see me start typing, and if you slow yourself down and read what those little pop-ups say, it feels a little less intimidating, because as you start to type the word resource, it suggests the whole word. You hit the letter R and it's already got eSource ready to go for you. Then with the other things, it tries to guess. There's a million choices. So really it's the shopping part that's going to take the longest if you're going to go this route. There's some shortcuts I can show you a little later that help you get around that cut that development time down. But that's the gist of getting used to the IntelliSense for that. But this is where the resource actually gets sent out, and it's actually going to build something. In this case, It's just a file folder, pretty harmless. Then the last bit is the output section. And this is going to return the next steps. I'm going to eventually show you how to do multi-file deployments, because one giant file eventually gets a little unruly if you're deploying, 5,000 resources. Do you really want 5,000 of these things? I mean, I made one resource group and I wasted about 4 to 5 lines already. So multiply that by all those resources and think about how big that thing would be. It'd be like playing Where's Waldo. So when you start working with multi-file, these outputs become really powerful. Or if you're a scripter, because you go to deploy this thing, and after it deploys, it's going to generate, let's say, a key. So we talked about with storage accounts, it'll have this little password key, but we don't know what that is until it's created. So how do I get it? The output will actually send it back down to you. And if you're a scripter, you can suck it up and use it for something else. Or if you have 2 files and you're using a multi-file system, which I'll show in a second, that output can then be sucked up by the other file. So what can you do with that? Like what kind of magic can we get going on that? Because I remember I said one of the requirements is no passwords. Can't have passwords in these files. Otherwise, we failed the test. Outputs might help us with that.
Could you technically send an output to like Key Vault, or make a call to Key Vault and send that output to a specified resource that you've already created?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. My demo is going to create the SQL admin using a dynamic GUID, set the Key Vault thing, and then also add the managed identity into Key Vault. So yes, the short answer is yes, absolutely. And Key Vault's actually one of the more amazing Bicep achievements, in my opinion, because if I say resource Key Vault and I access it using that keyword, that data type has this extension method .get secret, which it's like perfect. I love it, because then you just need to know the name of the key and it sucks it up and it runs it right there. But likewise, as long as you know the API to call the set Key Vault command, then yeah, you're able to do. So that actually will show up here in a second. Any questions so far about the file, like anatomy or anything like that? Good. Okay. Second one down. So then we're moving over to parameter files. So we spoke about all of this. This should look pretty much identical. I didn't change anything. The file is about the same. We have our metadata at the top and so on and so on. But we have this scenario where I have a production environment and a dev environment. Well, I can't. You don't want to modify the same file and make it kludgy and look weird, like if dev do this, if prod do this, because then it gets nasty. But what we can do is create a file that answers all the questions. So every time I have a parameter in this file and it says a question like, is this prod or development, we can make a second file that answers all the questions. The second file that answers that is going to be your parameters file. And even if you've seen Bicep before, you may not have seen this. It's one of the newer features. They added a thing called a Bicep param file, which I find to be really neat. So it feels almost backwards, like Jared, you TypeScript, right? Right. I know the answer. I'm just kidding. For the class, I'm saying TypeScript, right? Even though I know the answer is yes. Have you ever? What's interesting is the using statement goes into the consumed file, which is backwards to me. So that using statement, you would think it's like, usually when you're a library person, you're writing the main file and you say using this stream writer or using SQL client and you suck it up. This is the SQL client saying using program.cs backwards. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, sure, whatever. So, but I tell it, your best friend is this one right here. It's in the same directory, same everything. That's the name of it. But once it knows that, it can get a little bit more fun. So cram, there you go. So I just hit the space bar after typing cram and it suggests these 3 words. I didn't have to know that. That's actually, it just went and read that file. So I said using main Bicep and it goes, oh, hold on, let me go read that file real quick. Okay, it has 3 parameters, those 3. I didn't even have to know that. I just have to get real comfortable with letting the editor kind of lead. It's like cooking shows like Gordon Ramsay's like, let the knife do the work. Let the tab key do it all for you. It's kind of like it's one of the running. I literally say that at work. I did that. I'm very annoying at work. So yeah. So there you go. So I answered it. I answered the thing. We're good to go. Now, if you're old school like me, and you want to use the JSON, yeah. So this is, which one do you think reads a little easier? 2 lines, that. So you can see why people decided. So that was kind of going into the that JSON file I just showed y'all is the ARM way of doing it, and it's fully compatible because what happens is Bicep. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but it's a language similar to TypeScript where the language transpiles into another language. So this becomes that other thing I just showed you once you compile it. So like TypeScript, you compile it, transpile it, and it becomes JavaScript. Same thing with this, it becomes ARM template end of the day, which is the Azure Resource Manager language to manage Azure resources. And I remember to always say that because you always catch me on that every time I don't mention that. So we have this parameter file, so it's an answer key. So if I were to go to deploy something, and I added a little README for anyone who comes in here and tries to do this. If you're on an older version or you run into any weird issues, you can tell it to build the file and it'll spit out the JSON. And then this is the command new AZ deployment, or you can just go to the docs. If you just go to at the opening thing, like I don't think that you're going to come here and go, wow, that was an amazing doc. I'm going to use his instead of Microsoft's docs. If you just go to the Bicep docs and say how to deploy, you get that, or you can look at mine and work your way backwards if you really, really want to. But what's happening here is every time you deploy, you have to give it a name, and I'm just lazy, so that just makes it a GUID name every single time. I'm going to say I'm going to shoot it to the East US. I'm going to give it my template file, my answer file, and then this last part, what if? If you use this, it'll tell you, usually will tell you, what's about to change. You know about the GitHub issue. Okay. So usually, assuming I'm logged in a perfect world, and when I'm in the correct directory to do all this. So let's see here, if I go to the Tech Talk and we're in demo 2, then I paste this and I do a what if. We'll go ahead and fire that off while we talk through all of this. But basically what's going to happen, what if is really cool. It's a neat feature that it's a great idea. But what it does is it's going to go out and look at the resources and say, here's what I would probably do if I change this. The downside is there are still some bugs to work out. So if you're doing a subscription level deployment, be careful. If you're doing a resource group deployment, I've found that one's a lot more reliable. Sometimes it'll say, I'm not going to change anything, and it will change something. So yeah. That's been open for about a year or two. Hopefully they close that one soon. But you'll see here it says, oh, awesome. I'm going to add this, and I'm going to update the description. I'm going to add a name and call it all that. And it says, OK, fine. It's going to deploy the resource group. It's going to give it the tags for the product. Yeah, so if you just kind of glance through that, that's what I would expect it to say. Awesome. OK, so that creates a resource group. It tags it up. So we've done that so far. So we're making some progress. And you saw that it has the answer file for dev. Well, how would I make an answer file for production? I would just copy paste, change it to prod dot whatever, dot bicep. Everywhere, just update the values and you're done. Okay, so we've satisfied 2 of those things and doing pretty good on time, I would say. So far, still 7.
Who or what controls access to either dev or prod?
Great question. I've had a lot of, so I get this obstacle a lot where someone will hire in a contractor and they'll say this person's a super senior contractor and they're like, but they need access to prod to do the infrastructure as code. And I go, well, if it's truly a template, you put it into a pipeline. So you have pull requests, change management, and that thing is what's going to deploy to prod on your behalf because we don't want people going into the portal after deployment making changes because that's the opposite of that quality control we're looking for. So what I would say is you can go crazy in dev, go nuts. But once you've deployed it out using the template and you force yourself to do it through those routes, then that maturity or that discipline comes with huge benefits. So nobody, sort of. It's kind of a win-win, I think. I do give people access to do it if they want to, because I like people having the what if access to do that. Trusted few get to do that. But you could also argue you could just do that in the pipeline. Then you have to argue it's going to take a while in the pipeline. So it's up to you. But I would say pipeline is usually the safest way to do it. Somewhat. Yeah, you do have to have subscription level scope access of some sort. Yeah, that's. Yep. Yep. So I'll give them that if they fix the what if part. Well, they can have it. They can have the access level. I get it. It's totally fine.
Well, that's you, Ray. Yeah, what I usually see at big enterprises is what James just said. No one gets access to that. It's an automation on the DevOps pipeline. The only thing.
Well, you do have, there's no point putting something in prod if there are no users of that product.
So you're asking a different question.
Yeah.
We're answering the question, what has the ability to run these scripts like James is doing here to actually do the deployment? The question you're asking is, once that infrastructure has been deployed, who then has access to it? That's a different thing.
Yes.
And that's not done here.
That is not done here.
No, this is just building the bare metal. Honestly, anything I build is going to be brain dead. There's going to be no code deployment, no nothing. And actually, it's actually probably a good point to segue what infrastructure as code is and what it is not, because this will come up later. Infrastructure as code defines the configurations of a machine. So if you think of like, if you want to go back to like IIS or like any type of like actual thing of a physical box, the toggles you would set on that, like TLS versions, HTTP versions, configuration files, keys, SSL certs, those kind of things, you would control that. But what it doesn't do is runtime settings. So I would like to get the CPU of a current app that's running right now. Probably not a good idea. You'd probably want to go with Cousteau, which I learned is pronounced Cousteau for Jacques Cousteau. I was calling it Custo up until 12 when I did some research on the spelling. It was like, oh, and I put it in our continuous learning channel, and then I got like a bunch of messages, noob, like dummy, like I'm like, but it won't do that kind of thing. So if you could, and the reason I bring that up is because I use Bicep to write Azure policies a lot, and the policies, you can't do things like, if you're this much CPU, scale up. It's great to have scaling logic because you can do scaling logic in ARM templates or Bicep templates. But as far as reading what's going on the app, that's not where you're gonna, it's not a great fit for that. That's where you want something like App Insights, Azure Monitor, Log Analytics, whatever we're calling it this week. One of those, which one is it? Monitor? Is it Monitor right now? Yeah, currently Azure Monitor. Okay, so Azure Monitor currently. That's, remember we talked about the manager thing? That's where the manager stuff's coming up. I'm getting a little rusty on that part.
Is that your question, Ray? Yeah, I mean, you can do some things like role, you create custom role definitions, things like that. So, but setting permissions for those roles is a separate step.
So yeah, runtime, things like that. So that's what infrastructure as code is not. Two, we talked about. Yeah.
I think it's really important for people that are.
Mm-hmm.
When you have
Yep.
List of like Bicep.
Yeah, so that was this tab thing. Let the knife do the work. So I did it real quick right there, but if you sit this, whoop, so yeah, you can hit spacebar right there, or in my case, it's control. Okay, sure. The full templating.
Yes.
So command palette. That one.
Or sorry, generate.
That one. Hmm?
Kind of like master. Have a Bicep.
Hmm. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and honestly, a good point there is any extension in VS Code that you want to like really dive into. I feel like that's where you map all the stuff you haven't figured out how to get like a UI for yet. So those like extra features, it's always worth like kind of shopping to see what your extension can do if you don't, if you want to see some little edge features or something like that. Because there's typically a little bit more available there than everywhere else. That's always the last spot is the UI where they update. So yeah, it's you'll find a lot of great little nuggets. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. So fire read only, cool. And I threw an exception. Perfect. Not generating something. So yeah, the IntelliSense is amazing. The generation is amazing. The documentation when you hover is amazing. They've done a lot of work. You'll notice with the Azure Bicep, there's a lot of usability features. It's almost like they were just like, all right, guys, how do we make this usable? It's kind of the people in the room when they wrote Bicep, I think, is what happened. Nice. Yeah, I've been doing the PowerShell community calls up until recently, and I'm about to switch over to the Bicep ones. Have not yet, so I'm excited to hear that. I think I joined this last one for a minute, but yeah, I wasn't able to stay. So now I'm going to slow down. So this is where it starts turning into an actual demo. Up until now, it's been kind of catch up. And now we're getting into making this stuff actually do stuff. So we should probably revisit what our goals are for the objectives before we get into this, because we've hit a couple of them already. And let's go back to here. All right, so far we've created a resource group, but we need to create a website and add telemetry. All right, fair enough. Let's do that. Let's do telemetry and all that. But we did talk about how we don't want things to get too messy. So we're going to look at multi-file deployments. And to do that, I'll have to introduce some new keywords because this is going to be an actual. So up till now, the files have just been kind of demo files that don't really do much, but this one actually does something. And I'll walk through this just because some people might get something out of this. These are where I start getting into little personal. I should just throw a disclaimer. These are personal opinionated things that I like to try to do that I've used at my work successfully. And I like. If you like it, use it. If you don't, don't. This first one is this deployment ID. I like to pin a GUID or like a random value. So deployment, when I deploy, earlier I said I was lazy and I used a PowerShell command and said the name of the deployment is a new GUID. So that's a unique string I'm going to throw out there that'll always be unique. But when I deploy to a subscription and I deploy to a resource group, they're not always in the same place. So I need to be able to track between those. So like I'm going to go to the portal real quick, and here's my subscription. It's called development. I have this resource group right here, and that's the one that I was creating. But at the subscription level, let's see if I got this right. All right, so at the subscription level, at the left-hand side, I didn't want you to have to wait for anything to load, but when I scroll down, there's this deployments tab. So that's every time I've deployed one of these blueprints to the portal. And then right here is the line item, and that's the GUID I just used. Well, the thing is I'm about to show you is that my deployment that targets the subscription group is actually also going to target, it's going to create a resource group in a second. And then we're going to do the change directories or change scope, where I'm going to say, now I'm actually targeting a resource group. So I'm not only going to start at the subscription level, I'm going to sneak down into the resource group level after I create it. And then I'm going to sneak down into the resource level and actually create some resources as well. Problem is the subscription is only aware of the deployment that created the resource group. So if I click something like this, it's going to be a little bit lackluster. Like you can see the template. Now this will be the compiled, transpiled template. So that's ARM. You can see how it reads, kind of fun. But y'all would be excited if I was teaching this. So you can look at the template. The problem is that once I go over to the resource group, so I've clicked into that file folder now, I'm here. So I've changed directories, but it also has an idea of deployments. So right here has deployments. I think I might have been smart enough to actually preload that one as well. Okay, yeah, so you see how it says dev my app? It's very slightly different, but it's just a little bit different. And the difference is that that one has the title of my resource group, even though the screen is exactly the same. Problem is how do I correlate that back to the other one at the other place? So what I do is I just make everything use a deployment ID. I grab that little prefix of the GUID, and then I just kind of across everything, and I can just use that as part of my query. If it starts with this, then it's part of the same deployment. There's related events and tons of other ways of doing that. It's just a personal favorite of mine because I like the name to match. You can use prefixes or things like that. The problem is if you deploy twice and you use the exact same name, you're going to get a key violation. It's going to throw an error. It's an improvement from back in the day. Back in the day, it would just cover it up and it would just do like the first one result, but you'd have one that's still stuck running in the background. So you'd have to delete deployments, which is no fun for anybody. So that's where this little idea comes in. This is all the same stuff. I keep using the same template over and over. So if I'm breezing past something, it's not important that I'm breezing past because we've already seen it. But here's the next big one. So now we're in the business logic section, the VAR section. So I'm saying I have more info. The parameters we set are things I need at runtime, things that change between environments. But sometimes there are things that don't change between environments, and that's where a constant file comes in. But the biggest mistake I see a lot of people do is they try to use a constants file as a parameter file. When in doubt, it's a parameter. If it doesn't fit there, okay, maybe we can talk constants, but don't do this for things that change. In this case, maybe your team's email. You know, like our team email is devops@hcss.com. Probably not changing very often between environments. I don't have a devops at Gmail or at hcss.com or anything like that. At Bingmail, Outlook, Office 365. But what will happen is this is another command. So when I say var, and give it whatever name equals, if I say load, it'll read another file. So that same trick I showed a second ago where it read a file, the parameter file, and read the main file and said, oh, well, here's the 3 parameters you can use. Well, I can also do that with other stuff like this constants.json. So I created a file called constants.json that everyone's going to share. And in there, I just put the word product in my app. But just for giggles, I'll use my favorite, pink ponies. And we come back to here. And now I'm going to go into my config, and we need to add something because someone told me to do that, but it's going to be from my config file. And there's pink ponies. But I didn't know that. I didn't have to know that. It read it for me, and the IntelliSense kicked in and did all that. So now if I deploy, it's going to show up with that value on my resource. So I love that. That's amazing, but don't use it for things that change. For the love of God, do not use it for things that change. If I see you're not going to get away with anything like this where you're like, if you try to start writing a bunch of ifs, it will not work. You will rip your hair out. Your life is going to be very bad. Use a parameters file. I can't tell you how many times you get there early in the morning, you get your first coffee, and you're like, I bet you I could break that thing today and get it to work. And then by the end of it, you're like, this was a terrible day. So don't do that. Save yourself the headache. So the resource is exactly the same. Nothing changed there. But here's the new keyword is module. And module just means I'm about to load up. I'll be very careful with my words here. I'm about to load up a resource from somewhere else or resources from somewhere else. Usually it's a file, but you can also do files that are like on the internet. You can reference like URLs and things like that, or you can authenticate against things. But for right now, we're just going to pretend and just keep our brains thinking about other files. And then we'll add the next bit on top of that. So in my case, I need to create a deployment or a module. Because in my case, I don't like to write the template for how an app service should look a bunch of times. I only like to write one because I like the whole object-oriented concept of like computer, and a computer does code or runs program, or dog.bark, not dog 1, dog 2, dog 3, dog 4, dog 5. Like I don't want to have a bunch of different things. I'd rather have one template. So that way, when I deploy, kind of going back to the cookie cutter, I only want one web app cookie cutter. I don't need a bunch of them to do that because I want quality control. So I'm going to reference it one time. That's a stylistic choice. There is a website I'll show at the end for module authoring best practices. I get the feeling without reading it's going to agree with that because that's how most people do it, is that they'll have one for like an app service. How you break it up depends on what makes sense to you. But again, I'll make up some name and then, oh, that's cool. Looks like IntelliSense coming in to save the day again. I probably want to use the modules and, oh, there's the 2 files inside that folder. I want the app service equals, and then required properties. Good news, I didn't have to memorize all those values. Now the scope thing I said is going to come up over and over and over again. And the reason I bring that up is because I kind of briefly mentioned this, but I don't know if everyone caught it. I targeted the subscription. I want to create a resource group. So right here, a couple of lines, going the wrong direction. This is going to create the resource group. So this is the resource group. That is the scope. That is my C drive folder inside the C drive. It has now been created. If I want to scope to it, I can now scope to the resource group right there. Anything that fires off inside of this, so this is going to go into this app service.bicep file. Because I scoped it to the resource group, anything that runs inside of here is now running inside of the resource group folder. This is where the resources get generated. You cannot generate a resource unless you're inside of a resource group. So I target the subscription, create the resource group, change directories into the resource group, create the subscriptions, you're done. So that's the scoping thing. We'll get into these files a little bit more, but the idea is that you can break it into multiple files for readability, reusability, things such as, and then those parameters that I had at the top that I had to fill out using that answers file, that's what it's populating right there underneath where it says params. So everything you just learned, just make another file and then just kick it down a little farther, because everything you learned, it can be reapplied to the smaller file. It's just the exact same problems. So the module calls a bicep file. Well, bicep file has to have answers to the parameters. Okay, well, you got to answer them there. Well, how do I answer that? Well, this file can have parameters. Well, how do I answer that? I guess I would use a parameters file. Eventually, you track it all the way back and you have yourself a multi-file system that works together holistically. Does that make sense with the module part? Like the keyword just calls another file, not necessarily what's in the file or anything like that, just that there's another file that we're about to call. Yeah.
You see the name?
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
Mm-hmm.
The programming background.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. So remember I said that the scopes and that the deployments, I use this thing called the deployment ID. So right here, the name of this app service deployment is what I called it. That wording was very specific because a module keyword is a deployment. It is a group of work and not a resource. A resource keyword is a resource. Module is not a resource. A module is a deployment, a group of work of resources. So you also have to name it though. So what I name it is the name of the deployment that all of them share. So if I highlight that, you'll see down here this other deployment, same thing. And then this dash app service is just so I know which one it was. But that's kind of what I was talking about right here, where I go back to this. and this little prefix, but you'll see this little dash monitor. It's kind of small. I can see if I can zoom in and then hide the column that I'm talking about literally. But right here, see how it says monitor and app service on the end there? But if I did my job right, you'll notice that this really randomized junk at the beginning is the same between the two of them. So you know that those correlate. They are part of the same deployment. So even though that they sometimes break apart into multiple steps, I can still track it back to one singular deployment. And inside of said deployment, so just the monitor deployment, not the whole deployment, I can then go in there, see the outputs, the inputs, and you can even see the runtime values right here. So that's the parameters that were filled out a second ago. We talked about the parameters, not the vars. And I didn't cover it too much because but when I say keep secrets safe, don't put your secrets in there. If you do, those little attributes I showed you where it had minimum length, maximum length, and description, there's a little one that says secure, and that means keep it out of the logs. But typically when you're passing security stuff around as parameters, you'll get a little warning like, hey, maybe don't pass that around. Please don't. Because it gets a little tricky trying to keep the toothpaste in the bottle in a sense. So that is exactly what that is. So calling attention to the deployment stuff and the reason for why I even think having a deployment ID at the beginning is a neat trick.
You can't get too comfortable with goods though, because some resources have limits on characters and certain characters that can't be used.
Yep, exact. So if you go to the demo, I think I cover it a little later on, but let me just verify it's here. I have a URL on one of my parameters. When I come across it, I'll grab it, but I actually have what I usually do when I do a minimum length and a maximum length, I provide the URL to all the resource limits. So I actually have it pulled up on this demo. I'll get it at some point, but it says web app 3 to 26, this one, this to that, and yeah, all the naming problems. Because yeah, you will run into naming conventions. The GUID works sometimes. I haven't run into it with like deployment names, but yeah, you can't just go slapping GUIDs anywhere. So let's see here. So getting back on track, we have the resource group is going to get deployed, but we said we have to deploy a resource group deployment, or I'm sorry, an app service, and we need to get monitoring. So to do that, we're going to make a deployment, and it's going to be called app service, but it's got to fill out a few values, like what's the name of the app, what's the location. And I hard coded this. Typically, you'd pass it in with parameter files, but the reason you'd want the parameter files, there are some things that'll be different between production. Like, for example, a recording screen that, oh, did you do that or someone do that?
It's still working.
Okay. In production, I might have the $10,000 a month server, but in dev, you probably don't want that super expensive one, right? Like you don't want all that. So you could go with like lesser equipment. So that's why you'd want to expose some of these. Depending on what your needs are, depends on what you expose. Like, for example, I may not want to expose the ability to configure TLS 1.2. I just force you to do that. Like, you don't get to pick. I'm the security team. I publish the template, or a security team worked with me. TLS 1.2, you can pick the name, though. Enjoy. Off to the races. So it's kind of neat because you can shield certain things that they shouldn't. Like, not every developer wants to know the decisions. Not everyone's an architect. Not everyone wants to be an architect. I know developers who love SQL, and that's all they want to think about. I just want to be a SQL developer my whole life, and that's perfectly fine by me. Okay, well, just fill out those 3 answers, and I'll handle the rest. All right, don't worry about it. So it's really useful for those kind of scenarios as well, because you can help teams make best practices without having to learn the best practices. So that's another value there. So that will deploy the app service, but let me click into the app service and not put it in. Like, I'm not going to just say, yeah, just trust me, that thing deploys an app service. Let's click into it and see what actually happens. So what's happening is, oh, here we go. So this is based off of some quick starts. I refactored it a little bit, and then that link I told you about. So this maximum length I set to 60 and a 2 because in this thing, so if you go to the app service module and follow this link, in my demo, you'll see there's actually a website that says certificates. They're scoped to a resource group. This is the minimum and maximum length. You don't have to guess on that stuff. or kind of spitball it. It's actually all published. So this one went to the web apps, but if you look at this little scroll bar, it's comprehensive, it's exhaustive, it's there. So if you need it, it's there. Close that. That'll just get me in trouble. So as far as resource limits, yeah, you'll be able to see all of that. Now, as far as the parameters, we're about the same thing. I will say, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. If you're the person in charge of the templates and everyone else has to consume the templates, that's where this stuff becomes really valuable, is when you can have a shared template. But what's neat is you could say, at our company, we only allow these 3 sizes of web apps. And after it, one, it's good for people not overspending or just kind of knowing what to pick from, because sometimes too many choices can lead to slowdowns. But the other thing is it also stimulates good decision making. Like maybe scale up to more instances rather than having the big Bertha computer with 80 trillion processors running your 32-bit application that can't even use them. Maybe just have 2 computers running and scale up to 2 instances. I don't know. There's some options there. So you can also help with those kind of things. Or maybe you don't even write the scaling rules and don't even expose those, and you hide them in the template and just let people know this is the scaling app service template. If you use this one, it'll have scaling injected for you. It's not your concern. Don't worry, we got it. This one's the middle of the road one that exposes the settings and you can kind of configure it. And then there's the one with none of it and you roll your own. Maybe you do it that way. I don't know. It's up to you because they're your templates. Go nuts. What's your business problem? Let's solve it. Then I expose the capacities. And in this case, it was an integer of 1. I'll start breezing past data types and things like that. I was just trying to cater to the whole room with that. You got to figure out where it's going to be located. So this one's an app service plan. Again, if you want the help documentation, you can hover, click that, and it'll take you there and tell you all about it. If you didn't even know how to get there, you can type web app, hit tab, and that filled out most of that for like a web app. If I need a server farm, I'm going to guess here, but I'm guessing SER, or I can say like maybe like web app deploy. What does that do? There's an MS deploy. There's go shopping. It's fun. You can just easiest way to find these templates is if you just go to the Bicep documentation. At the very bottom on the left is a resource thing. I can show you that at the end. Just remind me. But it's basically a menu. You just go through it and go ordering, and you just shop for what you want. Copy the template in, and you're done. Or if you're really, really lazy like me, there's another option, and that is where you go to here, check the box for the one you want, and don't delete anything, and you can export the template right there, and it'll output a template. It'll probably build it in ARM, but Bicep has a command called Bicep decompile, and it'll take that file and turn it into a Bicep file. Or I think you can even do it in VS Code now at this point. I'm guessing you know more about the VS Code extension than I do. Right click. Yeah, and I think there's even like a paste from JSON. Yeah, restore by paste JSON as Bicep. Yeah, there it is. So yeah, you can even paste as Bicep. So it'll convert it right then and there for you. It's got a lot of stuff built in to help you convert it. But if I don't want to know how it's built and I want the computer to do it, maybe you just build it the first time by hand, get this junk to spit out, and then convert it into a Bicep template so it's readable, and then go from there. Got it. Hmm? Resource ID? Oh, okay, cool. That's nice. I guess the moral of the story is Control-Shift-P. Go check it out. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, Bicep. Very
Very cool. So this is the website, Microsoft Web/sites, that version. Then let's say we want to give it an identity. What's an identity? That is the ability to not give the website a password. It'll give it a user based on the name of the website or the web app. And just like a user in Active Directory, you can then go around Azure and grant it access to things. And a lot of the frameworks are built now so that you can utilize this get token command. I'm not going to get into the internals because this isn't how a managed identity class works, but what you need to know for this is that web app is going to act like it's a human being that's inside of your system that has single sign-on. It'll go around and authenticate to, say, Azure SQL with no password. If you want to go passwordless, it can do that using managed identity without secret tokens and stuff being stashed everywhere. Just pray to God that Active Directory is working exactly how you want it and it doesn't go down. And nothing with that. So anyway, with the intra Azure Active Directory ID, intra, my bad. Man, for the next year, it's going to be that awkward Google it with Bing thing for a while where I'm still trying to get used to people saying it. Where I'm like, all right. Yeah.
When you're writing your checks next year, you still are writing the previous year on your checks.
Yeah.
Everybody still writes your checks. Yeah.
Checks is a chess concept. It leads to a mate. There's me forcing the TLS 1.2 and HTTPS only. So that's like the security team. So at the resource level, I generally tell people to shy away from setting too much stuff here unless it's something that never changes. Like TLS 1.2 maybe is going to change, but that would be like a breaking change. That's like a template version change where I would release a new version of it and say, guys, all right, it's going to break. Be careful. I changed the TLS version. You might not be able to talk to other websites. So I'll downshift things like that where it's like you don't even get to discuss this one with me. As a developer, you do not get to discuss if HTTPS is turned on. It is on. That is a requirement coming down from the top. It's on. But if you want to talk about the name of the app, now that I'll expose. So let's say you have that scenario, then that's where that would be handy. Now, maybe you're in a company that allows that stuff. Go for it, by all means. I mean, just expose what makes sense and don't what doesn't. So this is going to configure it. And then it's going to output the app service name. So I mentioned earlier that I don't think you should do too much work at the resource level because there's bugs. And the bug that I run into a lot is this. Someone comes up here and says var web app name bug. And it's going to equal. We're just going to put two things together where it's something like, I don't think I actually have an environment tag here, but let's just pretend I have an environment tag and like the app name. Here, what I call it, app service name. So let's just pretend that's the name. And we're going to assume that that's the name. So I did some logic. I'm like, that's the name. We're good to go. Perfect. Down the road, someone comes in behind me. I'm not looking. And they decide to do this. They do that. Now what's going to happen is anybody who uses this value breaks. Anybody who takes my app service name by reference doesn't break. Coming over here, so I don't have a laser pointer. Anybody who uses this name breaks. Because right here, that's the real name. Because the app service, once it's generated, it's going to get oops on the end because someone came behind me and changed that and I didn't know they did that. So either I have to guarantee this never happens, or just get used to, after you deploy it, just use the reference name from then on. And you'll never run into that. I teach that like that's something that's in the books, but that just means I've ran into that and it sucks. So I'm just like, you know what? Cautionary tale. Watch out for that.
Full of hard knocks.
Yes, that is not a fun one to run into, but here you are. So yes, I use the var to create the name, but once I deploy it and use it one time, I'm like, nope, reference names. From then on, I won't talk to it. I will never talk to that value again once I can get it from somewhere else. But if I can't, then I'm like, all right, guess I got to get it from the var. So avoid that bug if possible, or just be aware of it and use your own strategy for getting out. But then This output thing, I said the app service name is the app service dot name. And I said the outputs are great for when you work with multiple files. So I just ran this thing. It has the resource keyword. So it creates the resource, creates the web app, creates the hardware that's going to go on, and then it outputs its name. That's it. Just outputs its name. Okay. Well, coming down here, I have to do the monitoring part. It's going to be scoped to the resource group again. It's going to use that dash trick we talked about. But here's where it gets a little fun. So what's the app service name? We just talked about using it by reference. I'm going to scroll up just a tiny bit so we can see it right here. This is the app service develop. God darn it. Clicks that get in my way. This is the app service development or deployment right here. That's going to deploy it. I can now reference that pink pony's name, whatever I call it. In this case, I'm just going to use a series name, app service deployment. Dot. Oh, hey, there's the outputs we were just talking about. Awesome. I wonder what's in those outputs. There's the one I just output. Done. Now I'm using the reference name that's output. And there's actually an added benefit to this. So I'm sure everyone like me is sitting out in the back right now thinking, well, James, what about race conditions? Because I'm thinking about race conditions right now at almost 8 o'clock or almost 7 o'clock. Sorry, I got that wrong. 7 o'clock. I need to set my clock. Time flies. So, well, the thing is, because I referenced an output from another deployment, it now knows that that one has to go first. It auto figures that out. There's other ways to do this. There's a keyword called depends on, where you can say, I have to wait for that to finish, but it's better to say, I just need a value from that one. So that way it just understands the relationship. And that'll actually help with your diagramming. Because I realize we're actually closer to 8, I'm going to show you the diagram right now and say that the SOC team is trying to bug us and they want our diagram. Top right, there's this little thing right here I'm going to click. Boom. There's my diagram. SOC team's happy. They're like, wow, there's your diagram. It's all diagrammed out and looking wonderful. Drag and drop. Or maybe I want something a little different. You can go to the portal and come back to this. And there's the resource visualizer, which these little arrows will let you know resource relationships, things like that. This works a lot better when you reference an output from another thing rather than say depends on. So if you want your arrows, there's some good reading on it. I think I have it in the GitHub, so we can look at it there as well. I'm going to jump over to this last file because it has the same concepts, but it'll save us a little bit of headache. So we talked about multiple files. We deployed a web app. We used an output. We talked about parameters. We talked about vars. We talked about resources. We talked about the values of them. Let's talk about key vault and secrets and passwords and all the goody bits, the really hard parts that I've been trying to get to this whole time, which deployment ID is exactly the same. Environment's exactly the same. My app is just called my app, exactly the same. Nothing's changed there. Still using the constants file, still using everything else, but we're going to do a key vault deployment. So I just added a file called key vault. I added the parameters that it's going to require, but I needed to generate the key vault. I'm going to go ahead and fire this deployment off right now while we explain it and save ourselves a whole bunch of time. Actually, let me just do this. I'm in the wrong directory. Fire that off. Minus this down. And assuming our security guy, Jeff, hasn't logged me out by some sort of timer or something like that, what's going to happen is I just simply added a file called key vault. I got these names and links from that website we talked about. I need to know the app service name. The only reason I need to know that is because right here, I'm creating a slightly new concept. It's the exact same thing as a resource deployment, but there's a keyword on the end there called existing. And when you use an existing keyword, is let's say another team owns the resource and you don't want to edit it. but I do want all of its goodies. I want all the bits, like, because once I see the keyword resource, I can now get into that thing and say, hey, what's your password? Hey, what's your settings for this? What's this do? What version of this are you? You can ask all these questions. The existing keyword says, but please, for the love of God, don't edit it. Just look at it, touch it. Don't touch it, just look at it. I need a copy of it. So I'm able to get away with things like, so like this app service reference, you'll see this little key, like this little like interface looking symbol. And then when even if I keep my cursor focused, and I say dot, you can see I'm now into the intrinsics of that web app. So this is the key vault. Documentation's here. If you hover, you can click that and go get all the values, but I'm just saying enabled for deployment, yada yada. This is where it gets interesting. Oh, yes. So what this is I created a resource, but this resource has a child resource inside of it, and there's a lot of ways to do it. So I've done it a couple of ways to show off the ways of having child resources. So a SQL server might have a SQL database. A website might have a website extension. So these are the child objects. How that's handled is at any point inside of the resource, you'll see this is slightly indented right there. I started using the keyword resource again. So that's that. Don't care what I call it. The only difference that you're going to notice is that this word is a lot shorter. And that's because it's taking the prefix from the one up above and saying, all right, look, I already know the version. I already know all this stuff. You just want to use access policy. Now you can override the version. You want to use a different version. That's why some of them do have versions, the other ones don't. Because it's just saying, it's basically saying something along the lines of this. So that access policies originally in the old spec would have looked like this. Yeah, you see that little thing right there? And then the name would have been the name of this plus a / and then the name of the child value. Oh, I guess I'm a little bit high. But the point was that they found that not to be too friendly. So they're like, you know what, we can concatenate strings for you. How about that? Let's just do that for you. Just put the resource inside the resource and we'll handle the rest. So that usability feature was really nice. But what happens is, so I create this key vault, I build it from scratch. I told you it's flagging this monitor, there's like a half-second delay, and it's just enough to screw with my brain. But this app service reference, I'm able to reference that newly generated user, the identity I was talking about earlier. I said it can have a username just like all of us, and then we can give it access to single sign-on. Well, I can also give it access to Key Vault right there. So when I fire off this template, what's going to happen is the Key Vault's actually going to get an entry into the Key Vault saying it can read the password, but I can't. I'm the guy who made the Key Vault, and I can't even look at the dang password. I mean, I could force myself to make myself see it, but for the purposes of the demo, if this went off, let's see if we got any errors. My confidence on scrolling up on the screen is pretty low, so I'm just going to go over here and check. Let's see what we got going on. I fired that off, right? Not nuts, right? Make sure I'm not crazy. So once that goes through, it should add in the identity and do all that kind of work. But I also added another file called another SQL file that's going to create the SQL server using all the similar patterns I showed you before, where it's going to go in, going to get some parameters. Now here's that secure thing, the admin password. I am going to pass it. It's not necessarily passing it in, but this new GUID command, I generate a GUID for the password. You have to do it at the parameter level. So just for demo's sake, I did it this way. There's other ways to do this, but I just generated a GUID because I didn't care because it's a demo. I have no interest in the admin password for a SQL server. I use single sign-on. And then if you want to add some firewall rules, you can do that as well. This is a new usability feature they added that I really like. I wish everyone has this, but this parse CIDR command allows you to work with rich IP addresses. So I'm used when I grew up, this was what we had to use. And it was just, if you want to figure out the versions, you had to split the periods apart or something. It was terrible. But now what I can do is I can say var, whatever this is, equals, and then if I take this firewall rules dot, so here, I'm just going to get the first one. Oh, it's an array. Start IP address dot, and then now it's a strongly typed IP thing, and it comes with an IP calculator out of box. I don't want to figure out what the first usable IP address is on some of those. I can do 24 and 32, like what people who can do that can do. But like if you start getting into like a 12 cider, can you use off the top of your head, a 13 cider off the top of your head? I don't know what the first usable IP address is, but that thing does. Hey, all right, there's a nice little trick. Ability to do that for you. So strongly typed IPs is really nice. That was a newer one, and I absolutely enjoyed that one for firewall rules. Very, very, very cool. So I generate this here, and then the admin login is sudo. But if you get the joke, you're about my age or older. TLS 1.2, you're not allowed to choose that. Those kind of things. And if you were to publish this module onto a website and I were to make a change and everyone else was doing it by reference and you change this TLS 1 or minimum TLS 1.2, everyone gets it because next time they use it, it's going to update that value. So that's what's really neat about it. This will also spin up a SQL database. Going to pull in AdventureWorks LT. Going to do some general purpose. And the SQL Server firewall rules, yada, yada. It's going to do the key vault. And this is going to just get the secret and add the secret in. So that's the admin password that we were talking about. So I reference the key vault. I go to the key vault. And then I add the secret to the secrets. I called it my secret sauce. SQL. And I give the admin password. And it looks like this deployment, oh, probably threw an exception. Let's see what I did. It's probably spinning up a key vault or something. I always love doing demo deployments. Here we go. What do we got? It's the darn soft delete. That's why I was afraid of doing the key vault. That's why I was afraid of the key vault. Let me see if I just
It's already in use.
Wait, what?
It's already in.
Oh,
it's already in use.
So I thought I fired it off a minute ago. And it may be just because it's already fired off. Let's see. No. See here, this one was one. Yeah, so that's not even anywhere near. I'll figure it out in a minute. That's fine. We don't have to talk about that. The deployment. That was just it for fun if we could do it. I knew the key vault was going to screw me. I shouldn't have done the key vault. That was what got me last time. The soft delete. I'll turn on the hard delete. All right, here we go. I'll do that real quick. Yep. So much nicer. Granting access. So that's IAM. There is some limited IAM access, and I think I saw a teaser about how they're trying to open up the new intra stuff with Azure Bicep, but yeah. You do roles. Yeah. Yeah, and that's been an ARM thing for a while, but it's such a minor pinhole. It's okay. Gotcha. Sure. So, okay, Adam, because I'm demoing and my brain's shut off because I'm demoing soft delete. Hit me with that real quick. It says so learn how to manage soft delete. How do you just go into the deleted and then delete it again? Oh yeah. I'm playing. let's see here, main.bicep, and we'll just do this. Okay, fair enough. I'll just change my app name because then the resource group and everything changes. I'll spin up a new resource group for everything. Don't challenge me. Yeah, it probably took. It's such a cool name. All right, so I'll fire that off. We'll see what we get. If we're lucky, then awesome. If not, then whatever. So, but what I was trying to point out though is you can add an identity using that. So that is one way to add it in during the deployment. Just be careful with key vaults. I usually reference them, and the reason I use key vaults that often is because I use the managed identity with single sign, so you don't really need to stash the password. There's actually no real point for it. We used key vaults early on when we didn't have managed identity, but we use it for like legacy reasons for sharing passwords. So, and I know a lot of people use it, so it's great for those kind of things. This scenario is probably not super useful, but I just wanted to interact with key vault to show that it's doable. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or certificates. I mean, you gotta import certificates using. So this thing's firing off. Actually, honestly, we can catch it live, and it might be worth just mentioning a little bit of debugging because we're at the end of our time. So what I will do is try to debug this one live just so we can do a little of that. So I'm at the subscription level. I come down here to my deployments. I should see something happening at this time of night, hopefully. Oh no, am I targeting the wrong subscription? Or is it my internet screwing up? Maybe. What's this pinkponies.com thing?
You violated security.
I'm not convinced that it's not some sort of like rule that kicks in later on at night that logged me out. Like I even have my key fob plugged in. But yeah, so that's going to deploy out to the subscription. It should deploy out to the resource group and knock that out. But we're pretty low on time. So, man, I really wanted to get to the bicep config. All right, I'll just shut it down here. As far as questions so far on all this, though, because we're getting to the time, I'll stay and cover anything anyone wants to cover, but at least until Adam kicks me out. But any questions about what we covered so far? So far, we just covered the templates, how to use them, some use cases, but I just want to open it up for anything else. Good.
You're absolutely like. There are individual secrets in. How do you then handle it during like? Certificates.
Well, it throws an exception apparently. No, jokes aside, here's what I ended up doing. So I have this app service, and in this case, what it's going to do, and going to come in and actually, I think I can do it. Yeah, here we go. I think this is it. Service rep. There's my key vault. It's going to create the key vault. And then I generate this. Here we go. Okay, so I create the SQL database. I create the SUSU Studio thing. I create the firewall rules. I reference the key vault and pass the password in. So what's happening here is this should be the ad. Yeah, this is I'm generating a new GUID as the parameter, and then in here every single time it's actually going to insert a new key into the key vault every time with a new version. So I just do it that way. If you're going to rotate a key, you just output the keys like list keys command extension method. Is there a specific implementation you're thinking of? Oh yeah, no, it's terrible. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so
pass it in.
Initial password. They can deploy. Right. So either I'm gonna
Or I want to do initial deployment, which creates the secret. It's some sort of.
Okay.
Not
Okay, I think I understand. So the question for the people online is we're looking at initial deployment, the seed password first time. So it's not something that Azure provides like a key that's generated for us. How would we handle that? I can offer up some ideas, but I'm not going to necessarily say I have the perfect answer. So if you were to generate something randomly, saying using your script, like if you do like generate a password using PowerShell, if you pass it in under a secure parameter, then you can keep it out of everything as far as like the feedback. I think Key Vault has a generate keys functionality, so you might actually be able to like get it to generate values for you and just consume those as well. Was that a yes? I know you can get keys for encrypting hard drives and things like that. I think you might be able to get it to suggest. I'd have to look to be sure. Hmm?
Is the function app.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that way you pay for it after.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was gonna say like if you take like PowerShell, it has like native key pass and like all those different integrations, and those guys have password generators. So, I mean, if you can just get to a password generator at some point, or Azure DevOps might be able to help you out there a little bit.
I think the key rotation thing is a thing.
Hmm?
You don't want to do the rotation. You want to do it outside of it.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, something like that changes. If it changes, it's a parameter, or you're gonna need like a bicep that. I don't like using biceps to pass things around their security base. So normally I would say like, oh, if you're just trying to do that, make a bicep file that's a module, and all it does is functions and concatenates stuff together. But password land, no. Yeah, I might just do something like if you're, I'm Azure DevOps, not as much GitHub. So what I would do is like if you have like a library or something, you can pass it in as a parameter that's not in the parameter files. Pass it in because like when I go to do a deployment, so if I say like new dash AZ deployment, and I give it all the values, but like let's see here, a template parameter file or template file. If I get in here far enough. Just start tabbing. This will take a second because it's going to dynamically generate, but there it is. See how it says, I hit tab and I went to dash environment and deployment ID. If I would have put pink ponies in there, it would have showed up too. But, oh, and that's a dynamically generated. So basically I can pass them in there. Even so, if it's not in the parameter file, I guess that's like kind of the pinhole that I would look for passing in a password. Because I know that there's a lot of stuff and once I can get to PowerShell, I can get away with murder. Because I mean, at that point you have like if I just cut this out and then I say $creds equal get check. There's a way to do this in a pipeline without saying get creds, but Tony's yeah. Yep. They're in here somewhere. Come on. Oh wait, let me just paste that back. So I caught it. Good. And then $creds. Well, and I was able to get away without any input showing up into my terminal, but I still was able to pass it in. You put the little secure attribute and then off to the race. But that's just a pattern. That's not necessarily the solution. That's all right, cool. Anything else, Phil? No. All right. I appreciate y'all coming out. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you all for
Thank you all for coming out as well. Appreciate it. Thank you, James. Thanks for all the questions. And I hope to see you next month. We're looking for speakers for next month. So if anyone else, members of the community, want to talk about something that you know, please let me know. We'd love to have you share your knowledge. In any event, we'll see you next month. Thanks all for coming.